The Achaemenid Empire, ruled by Darius III, fell after 229 years when Alexander the Great defeated them. The Seleucids then ruled Iran for 80 years before the Parthians, led by Arsacid, rose to power. After fierce battles, the Parthians broke free from Seleucid control. Tiridates I, who succeeded Arsacid, solidified the dynasty through his intelligent strategies and battles. He defeated Seleucus II Callinicus, forcing him to retreat. Following this victory, Tiridates focused on unifying Iran. He died in 214 BCE from natural causes. After the defeat of Darius III of the Achaemenid Empire by Alexander the Great, the powerful Achaemenid dynasty effectively came to an end after 229 years of rule. Alexander the Great, with a larger army, extended his control over regions of Iran, Greater Khorasan, and parts of India. However, according to historians, Alexander died at the age of 32 in Babylon, allegedly due to excessive drinking. Following Alexander the Great, the empire was divided into three parts: the Seleucids in Asia, the Antigonids in Macedonia, and the Ptolemies in Egypt. Seleucus, after Alexander's death, claimed the throne and became the king of Iran. He founded a city near ancient Babylon called Seleucia and declared it the capital of the Seleucids. The Seleucids ruled over Iran for 80 years until a group of Iranian origin, known as the Parthians, suddenly emerged in the northeast of Iran. The Parthians clashed with the Seleucids, and their confrontation was successful. They managed to drive the Seleucids out of Iran. This marked the end of the humiliating defeats that Iranians had suffered at the hands of the Greeks and Romans. Following this, they established a dynasty that would become one of the most important and powerful in the history of Iran. Parthia, in ancient times, was region we now know as Greater Khorasan. Darius the Great of the Achaemenid Empire referred to this area as Partava in the inscriptions at Behis tomb, alongside Naxchirostam and Persepolis. Greek writers and historians used the term Parsi, and Islamic-era authors referred to it as Ashkani. This narrow region stretches eastward from the southeastern shores of the Caspian Sea and is bordered by deserts and arid lands to the north and south. Harirud is a river in Afghanistan that flows through the shared border of Iran and Afghanistan. Upon joining the Tejan River, it enters the deserts of Turkmenistan and terminates in the Karakum Desert. In this geographical area, historians mention two regions known as Gorgan and Parthia, although it's not precisely clear where each was located. Gorgan likely represented the north and west, while Parth was in the south and east. Most of the territories were under Gorgan's control, as it encompassed more deserts and arid lands. There is a significant difference of opinion regarding the Parthian ethnicity. Ancient Greek historians believed that the Parthians were one of the Scythian tribes known as the Parthi and that their language was Scythian. The word Parth in the Scythian language supposedly meant exile. However, the famous Greek historian Strabo believed that the Parthians were a branch of the Da'i people. The Da'i were one of the subgroups of the Scythian tribes living in Turkmenistan. Strabo thought that the Parthian language was a form of ancient Pahlavi with a northern dialect. Ancient Pahlavi had two dialects, northern and southern, which were not significantly different from each other. The people of that region spoke Pahlavi, and these dialectical differences did not create communication problems. On the other hand, some scholars argue that the Parthians were not of Scythian or Aryan origin and had no direct connection with the vast Iranian plateau. Instead, they believe that the Parthians were immigrants who arrived in Iran from distant lands and gradually assimilated with the Scythian peoples over time. The name Arsacid and later Parthian originated from a historical figure named Arsacid. Arsacid was the first ruler of the Arsacid dynasty, and he was the first among the Parthian tribe to establish a monarchy and form a government. Although their initial rule was not particularly powerful, he laid the foundation for an empire. Over time, the subsequent rulers of the Arsacid dynasty maintained the name Arsacid to honor its founder and identify themselves. They referred to themselves as Arsacid I, Arsacid II, and so on. Eventually, this led to the term Arsacids, and it later evolved into Parthians, becoming the name of their kingdom. As for Arsacid's origin, there are various accounts, but Strabo's account is considered closer to the truth. According to Strabo, Arsacid was a member of the Scythian tribe and the Parthian subtribe. He lived with his tribe in the Etrex Valley. Upon learning of Diodotus, a Greek governor, declaring independence in Bactria and minting coins in his name, Arsacid separated from the Seleucid government and came to Parthia, where he led a rebellion against the Seleucids. This event marked the beginning of the Arsacid, or Parthian dynasty. The Arsacids held the longest period of rule in the history of Iran, reigning for a full 5 centuries. Despite their long rule, there are relatively few written and archaeological records from the Parthian era. This can be attributed to various factors, some of which are related to internal issues within the Parthian realm. The Parthians had their share of difficulties and conflicts, particularly with the later Sasanian rulers. In the late stages of Parthian rule, they became blood enemies with the Sasanians. When the Sasanians overthrew the Parthians, they were not particularly interested in preserving the heritage of their predecessors, and historians in the Sasanian court did not write extensively about the Parthians. Another reason for the scarcity of Parthian records comes from ancient Greek and Roman historians. The Parthians were often in conflict and hostility with Western powers. As a result, there are limited historical accounts of the Parthians, and most of what exists often reflects the viewpoints and interests of the Greek and Roman historians themselves. The history of the Parthians is commonly divided into 3 distinct phases. The early period, this phase begins with the establishment of Parthian rule by Arsacid I. During this time, the Parthian government was not particularly powerful, but they worked on consolidating their rule and strengthening their position. They launched attacks against the Seleucids and gained independence from them, marking the early years of their sovereignty. The height of power, the Parthians reached the peak of their power during this phase. The world was essentially divided into 2 major powers, the Parthians and the ancient Romans. These 2 empires engaged in constant warfare and conflicts, with the Parthians achieving several significant victories against the Romans during this time. It was a period of Parthian ascendancy. The decline and fall. In this phase, the Parthian Empire began to weaken and face internal challenges. Eventually, the Parthians grew so weak and encountered so many internal problems that their rule came to an end at the hands of Ardashir Babar Khan of the Sasanian dynasty. This marked the end of the Parthian rule and its incorporation into the annals of history. After some time, unrest emerged in the western regions, and the Greek government took control. They, along with leaders such as Sogdiana and Margiana, established a government independent of the Seleucids, known as the Greco-Bactrian Kingdom. The ruler of this Greek government was Diodotus, who was originally from Greece. 6 years after the Greco-Bactrian uprising, the Parthians, led by Arsacid, separated from the Seleucid government around 250 BCE. When this news reached Antiochus II, the Seleucid ruler at the time, he did not give it much importance. It was during the reign of Antiochus II that the Parthians began their uprising. The Parthians, in their pursuit of freedom, saw the newly founded Greco-Bactrian government as part of their territory and were determined to reclaim it as their own. This marked the beginning of the Parthian challenge to the Seleucids and, subsequently, the rise of the Parthian Empire in the region. Antiochus II faced several challenges during his reign. He was engaged in wars in Syria and Asia Minor and did not have the time, opportunity, or sufficient forces to wage war against the Parthians. Moreover, there were long-standing hostilities and sought opportunities to exact revenge for past grievances between the Parthians and the Seleucids. The Seleucids were of Macedonian origin and were part of the Macedonian Empire. Antiochus II even exiled his wife, Laodice I, to modern-day Turkey as part of his political maneuvers. To solidify his alliance with the Egyptians, he married Berenice, the daughter of Ptolemy II. However, in 264 BCE, Antiochus abandoned Berenice and her young son in Antioch and traveled to Asia Minor to reunite with Laodice. However, Laodice had not forgotten the injustices and mistreatment she had endured at the hands of Antiochus. As a result, she poisoned him, seeking her revenge. This event marked a turbulent period in the Seleucid Empire's history and contributed to its ongoing struggles. While the Greco-Bactrian kingdom had managed to free itself from Seleucid control, it still retained a Greek character and was under Greek influence. In contrast, the Parthians asserted their sovereignty fully and did not adhere to Greek influence. They had effectively discarded Alexander the Great's vision of a global empire that spanned both Europe and Asia, focusing instead on building their own distinct kingdom. The Parthians not only successfully rebelled against the Seleucids but also expanded their territorial control. While there were other uprisings in regions such as Azerbaijan and parts of Asia Minor, none could match the power and resilience of the Parthian rebellion. The Parthian Empire's assertive independence, military strength, and territorial expansion marked a turning point in the history of the region. On the other hand, the rule of Arsacid over the Parthians was not without internal conflicts and battles. Over the course of 2 years, he engaged in internal wars to eliminate rivals within the Parthian region. Eventually, he laid claim to the city of 100 Gates, which is known today as Damgan. According to historians, Arsacid began his reign in the ancient city of Nisa, located near present-day Ashgabat, the current capital of Turkmenistan. He also assumed the crown in Arsacid, known today as Kuchan, Iran. However, during these internal conflicts and struggles, he suffered a wound inflicted by a spear and passed away in the year 247 BC as a result of that injury. Following Arsacid's death, his brother, Tiridates, succeeded to the throne. The rise of the Arsacids truly began with Tiridates. When Tiridates ascended to the throne, the Parthians did not possess much power in the territory, and they faced internal challenges. Nevertheless, Tiridates took bold actions by assembling an army and expanding his realm, even claiming a portion of the Greek Seleucid Empire. Tiridates aimed to advance, but during this era, Ptolemy III, who had been crowned as the ruler of Egypt, led a formidable army into the Asian territories. He annexed Syria, Babylonia, and many cities in the surrounding areas to his dominion. Tiridates had heard the news of Ptolemy's advances and was filled with fear. His army was not sufficient to stand against Ptolemy's might in Egypt. However, at the same time, he received news of Ptolemy's retreat. The story goes that Ptolemy needed funds and wealth for his campaigns, and for this reason, he had increased taxes in Egypt. On the other hand, the Seleucid king Seleucus II Callinicus had defeated Ptolemy and gained significant spoils. However, he had to retreat from there to quell internal turmoil, taking the riches and spoils with him. The wealth and spoils were loaded onto caravans and brought back to Egypt. Tiridates, who was delighted by this news, prepared his own army and took control of Gorgan. In 237 BC, Seleucus Callinicus made peace with his brother Antiochus Hierax and seized the opportunity to lead a powerful force towards Persis, aiming to reclaim the northeastern territories of Iran that had been lost. Although Seleucus Callinicus had embarked with a powerful army, as a precaution, they also made agreements and alliances with the Greek commander Diodotus to exert more pressure on the Parthians. Tiridates I's spies also caught wind of this news and brought it to Tiridates I. They informed him that Diodotus the Greek and his forces were planning to attack him. On the other hand, Callinicus was advancing in his direction, and they were to exert pressure on Tiridates from both sides. Tiridates made a very intelligent move in response. He headed toward the Scythian tribes beyond the Gihon River and forged an alliance with them. The Scythians provided Tiridates with additional forces and military equipment, enabling him to assemble a coherent army and build up his own power in the region. As the war had not yet begun, better news reached Tiridates. He learned that Diodotus the Greek had died, and his son had become the successor to the Seleucid throne in the west. Tiridates did not waste time and moved his forces toward Bactria. He also formed an alliance with Diodotus's son to ensure he did not remain under the banner of the Seleucid kingdom and had no alliance with Callinicus. This way, Bactrian forces came under the banner of Tiridates I. The Parthian army had grown powerful. A decisive battle took place between the Parthians and Callinicus's forces, with the Parthians emerging victorious to the extent that Callinicus was forced to retreat, relinquishing several territories to the Parthians. Callinicus headed to Syria, where he contemplated revenge, but his brother denied him that opportunity. His brother suggested that they should avoid further engagement with the Easterners, as any time they fought with them, it weakened their overall strength and power. He advocated for focusing on domestic affairs instead. Tiridates had achieved a significant victory and put an end to the victories of the Greeks, Romans, and Western powers after a long struggle. He faced two options: to capitalize on the weakness of the Seleucids and expand his own territory, or to stabilize internal affairs. He chose to focus on domestic matters, establishing strong borders, constructing fortifications, and creating powerful citadels to deter potential invaders from entering his realm. Simultaneously, Tiridates I established multiple military bases and deployed skilled soldiers within these garrisons, gradually strengthening his army. This strategic move allowed him to garner more allies internally and consolidate his rule. You might wonder why the Arsacids needed a new capital when Hecatompylos, city of 100 gates, was already established as their capital. In reality, Tiridates' decision to change the capital was a strategic move. Hecatompylos was a Greek city with a significant Greek presence, and the Arsacids were concerned that it might pose challenges to their newly established rule and gradually erode their power. Ultimately, the second Arsacid king, Tiridates I, passed away in 214 BCE of natural causes, and he was the first Arsacid king to adopt the title of Shahanshah, King of Kings, following the tradition of the Achaemenids. If you enjoyed this video, do not forget to like it, and share it with your friends. Do not hesitate to provide your view regarding this video by putting your comments below. Your comments would help us to improve our work, and also, they help us to take your views into account for the future topics that we select. Furthermore, you can subscribe to our channel to become aware of our new videos.